Okay? The next thing I just want to share with you is some of the key concepts. Number one, remember, talking too much and taking off the focus of the need for the good behavior. What you need to do also is, instead you must switch the student's attention onto the possibility of an energetic and sometimes enjoyable argument. So those are the two key concepts. Just to remind you on the model, this is the anatomy of the behavior cycle. I want you to make a special note here. I want you to notice from calm to peak. I want you to write this word down. The student is irrational. Put a big line of it. The student is irrational, very irrational. They are not thinking with their rational brain. Also put a note to yourself, from calm or from trigger all the way up to peak, they are thinking with the emotional brain. They are emotionalizing at this point. What are you going to do here? Jennifer, Charlie, Tina, Charlotte, Ken, you're not going to intervene. Please don't. This is the time where you do a lot of stepping back and you do very little intervention, maybe 1 to 2 word intervention, because nothing is going to make sense at all. And the student, allow the student to go up to the peak, okay, through the escalation, and at some point they're going to stop. And then automatically, because of our nature, we just cannot stay there for far too long. Some people can. I'll show you in a graph in a few moments. There'll be this de-escalation. And on the de-escalation side, I want you to write this word down. The student in question is starting to rationalize. We're having a rationalization process taking place from peak de-escalation all the way down beautifully to recovery. Do you see that? So on the left-hand side, we have the emotional mind engaged. On the right-hand side of the graph, we have what? The rational mind coming back, where I'm starting to self-reflect. I'm starting to think about my actions, and eventually we move to recovery. I want you to write this down. Your point of intervention should be between de-escalation and recovery, somewhere around there. This is called your POI, point of intervention, and that's where you need to intervene. Let me show you this graph. Oh gosh, look at that. Imagine having a student with the red bar or the red line. What's happening here, folks? What's happening here?
He's been angry for a long time.
A very, very long time. Yeah. I'm not going to do it. I refuse to do it. And I'm going to stay here for about 20 minutes, and you are not going to make me do it. I'm angry, frustrated, and I'm going to kick that chair, and you get out of my way. So, and they're going to stay there for a very long time. Okay? The next piece on the graph is another student, the blue line. This is where someone has escalated. Some prevention has taken place, but it's not the behavior is not as high as the red one. Okay? And something did work here. Every time I look at this one here, I'm reminded of what did cause that sudden dip. Well, one hypothesis has always been for me is, well, dad or mom just walked into the classroom on the blue line. All right. The next one is, this is the one we want to have. A very small, tiny, teeny episode. The last one, which is the yellow one that you see on your screen right now, is the one where PBS has been very effective because the student has self-regulated. They know exactly what they need to do to de-escalate. They've used the strategies that I'm teaching in this class. They have realized, they've rationalized, they've moved the emotional mind to the rational mind real quickly, and they're able to de-escalate. So there's some self-management, and the yellow is what we want, okay? And that's what PBS teaches. PBS teaches how to get to that yellow, okay? So if you go with me to, I think, wherever it says past de-escalation, let's go to the exact last slide, which is the one I have right now. This is what you're going to do in the last at the recovery stage. What brain are we dealing with, folks?
Rational.
We're dealing with the rational brain. This is the brain that can process and think logically and act logically, hopefully. So to assist that recovery phase, we do what is called a debriefing. And what I want you to do during this time, folks, is when you have the students, you're going to debrief with the following question: what did I do? And have them talk to you about that. The next question is, why did I do it? What could I have done instead? What do I have to do next? Can I do it? The stuff that I needed to do instead. And one more question that I really like, and I'll always ask the student, did I have a choice? And what was my choice? Okay? All right, there you have it, the model. Any questions, East, West, Middle Tennessee, and from this class regarding the anatomy, understanding how a behavior works, looking at the rational mind versus the emotional mind, when not to act, when to act, and the theory or the rationale behind doing this. You all see that. Yes, Connie?
What can teachers do to help remove some of the triggers from the classroom? Are there ways we can restructure the environment to deal with some of those triggers?
Great question. Actually, that's my next couple slides. We're going to talk about low-profile techniques. Low-profile techniques, I will get to that in my third slide and probably answer that question, how you could structure your teaching, your environment, your interaction in a very systematic and logical way to actually stop these behaviors from happening and stop the escalation from happening, okay? And some of the strategies we're discussing today will also help with that. So the three main elements is that, number one is that we need to identify how to intervene early. We also need to know what the environmental factors, like Dr. Smith talked about, and we also need to look at replacement behaviors. What are we going to replace as a result of this, okay? Let's talk about this. I call this the 4 phases of transition. When a student misbehaves, there is a pattern of behavior from the student that's misbehaving. Number one is they go through a process of denial. That is, you know, I justify that what I'm doing is appropriate. It's rational to myself. I tend to show some resistance to authority, but after a little while, I start to open up my rationalization brain to explore possible alternatives, and then I commit to a new way or a new pathway. So when your students are misbehaving or continue to misbehave in this pattern, they're usually at the denial and resistance stage. Your job as a teacher is to move them down to explore other alternatives and to explore other commitments that they could make to move down to the next path. I call this one proximity interference. You probably, something real basic, but I've put a little more science behind it. Proximity interference, for example, here we have Ken, who's always getting into trouble, and what I do is I just come closer to Ken and invade his space. And it's also known as proximity control. And sometimes, if it's appropriate, I can lightly touch Ken and I continue talking in my presentation. What I'm doing right now is proximity control in the sense that I have brought attention that the behavior that Ken's engaging in right now is not conducive to our learning environment, so I'm close up to him. I have what is called a special rule with proximity control. When you do that, I use what is called a stuck on you rule, 30 seconds, and I stand there for about 30 seconds, okay? Because what I'm trying to do is prevent Ken from repeating this down the future, all right? The other thing I call it PODA mapping. PODA, feet, mapping, walking, pacing. So when I teach from here. I'm in this person's zone, and this person is aware that I'm here, and I can disrupt and prevent from an activity. Then I PODA map over here while I'm teaching. I PODA map over here while I'm teaching, and over here while I'm teaching. So what you have to do is zone your classroom, especially ones that are disruptive, spend more time in those zones, okay? So that's called proximity interference. Signal interference, remember going to church? Your grandma had to just look at you and you would freeze if you were talking in the aisle or the pew. Signal interference is a beautiful tool we should also use in our classroom. This is where you project that business-like look, like the one that Ken looks, is the camera can just go on to Ken. There we go. Business-like look. There you go. Perfect. Perfect, Ken. Fantastic. Natural. He's a natural at signal interference. If you have a look like that, I guarantee you are going to stop that behavior. And have you seen your mom give you the look? That's what signal interference. You're disrupting that from taking place, okay? The other thing I love talking about is the visual behavior meter. I know a lot of you are doing this, is that I know teachers that use the red card or the yellow zone, red zone, and green zone, and basically they would take the color-coded cards placed in the front of the classroom, and they will move a clothespin to show where each student is that has the name on each student. So when they get to the red zone, they actually visually can see it, and they know it's them, and they have to make some adjustments in accordance to that. So using a visual behavior meter in class where all of your students can see this and understand that green means that's where we want to be, yellow means, hey, you've been just red flagged, or red, uh-oh, you're in the red zone, here's what I need to do. It's an office discipline referral, and we initiate a process. Next thing is called check-in, check-out, and I'm going to talk to you about check-in, check-out and very briefly. I also encourage you to look at my presentation on the second DVD. I spent an entire hour talking about this that you will see on your screen right now. In the check-in, check-out, what you see right here is called a dream card. It has tallied points. Basically, a student would come in the morning, check in with you, and fill out this card. And it has descriptive behaviors, and it is scored. And they go from class to class, and teachers sign it, and they get feedback. That's always going to be instant, and it is scored. A copy goes to the teacher, and a copy is sent home. It's done over an 8-week period. If the intervention needs to last that long, it deals with behaviors that are students having difficulty with keeping on task or completing assignments or not being cooperative or socially deviant.